I ruined everyone's life. My ex-husband popped and offed my affair partner. 2 lives I destroyed. I live with the regret today. No meds or therapy can help me, and I lost custody of my babies. Here's my story. I've been diagnosed with PTSD. I am a 41-year-old woman who will never forgive myself. My babies, 12 boy and 14 girl, are gone and out of my care. The state took them away from me. I am in a very miserable state. I see doctors and they try to keep me on meds. I'll take it for a while, but then I have to get off of it. It puts me in a very uncontrollable state. I'm just existing and don't want to move, and it makes me very tired. So to get to it, I was married to my ex-husband for 8 years. I married my ex-husband when I was 29. He was 24. His mother did not want him marrying me. I love my ex-husband. Loved him then and still love him now. We had a son together that is indeed his. I know it. My daughter's father was never in her life. My ex-husband Neil took over raising my daughter. I initially met Neil when he was 19 years old. We had a thing. It was only sexual for about a year. We met up again after I had my daughter. I confided in Neil. When I got pregnant by douchebag, he straight up told me to terminate it because he's not raising another baby. Douchebag is married with 5 kids. When Neil and I met up again, I told him how I'm all alone and how hard it is. Neil was there for me. He'd just graduated with an associate's. Neil made great money operating machines. I don't know exactly what type, for a local company. Neil told me that he was in love with me and he wanted us to be together. I was so happy because I'd fell in love with Neil before. I just never told him. I met Neil's mom for the first time and she did not like me. She told me her son was not going to marry a woman with a child and he needs his own children. I stressed to Mrs. Smith, fake name, that I wasn't here to take advantage of Neil and that we loved each other. She told me I was robbing the cradle as if I was more than 10 years Neil's senior. We are only 5 years apart. This woman told Neil that if he marries me, then he could never ask her for anything ever from her or his father. She definitely wears the pants in her marriage. Neil married me regardless, and we had a son together. It was a small wedding, and Neil's mom did not attend. She didn't stay away for long, though. When our son was born, it seemed like all was forgiven. We just never spoke on anything again, as far as her not wanting us to marry. I wasn't a lazy wife, not a stay-at-home wife at all. I worked as well. I didn't have as great of a job as Neil did, but I made money, and we split the bills. He paid majority of the bills, but I also did my fair share. I didn't use Neil like his mom intended I'd do. Our home was our home. So the 2 adults in the home took care of the home. That's what we both did. I loved my husband, and I know he loved me. It never crossed my mind to ever cheat on my husband, but I was at a very weak and vulnerable moment. Our marriage wasn't perfect. Of course we argued, so he had a colleague that he worked with. The company he worked for had split divisions departments. My ex-husband Neil worked in the shop where he ran the machines, and on the other side in the offices, there were what they called drafters. One of the drafters was a female who just loved my ex-husband Neil. They were around the same age, and she was single with no kids. I found it weird that she needed him to know that about her. I honestly can say I was a bit worried. I felt threatened. She was very pretty, and Neil did admit to me that she tried to hit on him a couple times, but he assured her that he'd never leave his wife and family. Neil's company had a Christmas party. She was just mugging me the whole time, and she was there with the date. I confronted Neil about her, and he admitted that she did try to hit on him before he lied to me and said she never talked to him, and if so, it was just colleagues' relationship and that I had nothing to worry about. I confronted him that night and told him he better tell me the truth, and he told me. He swore to me he'd never slept with her, but he didn't want to tell me that she's been flirting with him, and he had to tell her a couple times that he was married. Neil told me that he'd never do that to me. I had full access to his phones, laptop, and everything. And you better bet your ash I did go through those things, and I never discovered that he cheated on me. I did believe him. He wouldn't do that to me. But my insecurities kept going until eventually I cheated on and the first time I cheated on Neil was the last time I cheated on Neil. And that was the time he snapped because he caught me right then and there in our home. So even though Neil never cheated on me, I felt jealous that he had someone at his job that was flirting with him. So I would tell myself he has a work wife. I deserve a work husband. No one at my job was hitting on me. I never had to worry about anything. He never went through my laptops or anything, nor snoop around on my social media. I could say this about Neil. He was very trusting. He didn't think I would ever cheat on him or do anything wrong. I kept telling myself that Neil was lying to me and that he's very good at lying. And he's very sneaky, and convinced myself that he worked overtime where he was supposed to be by himself in the shop, but was there with her. They were hooking up somewhere in the office. I was convinced. Every once in a while, I'd confront him and accuse him and try to trick him. And he just told me I had nothing to worry about. I'm not cheating. He started calling me in between breaks and when he needed to work overtime. He'd make sure that he called me to show me that he was by himself. I couldn't see, of course, but he'd walk around the office and talk really loud within the office. Walk around in the back saying he's the only one here so he can scream as loud as he can. I told myself that he was cheating on me, even though I had zero proof. One day, my colleague and I decided that we'd both call off sick. The plan was to go to his place, but things didn't quite work out because when I got there, he texted me saying his roommate came home. His roommate was in college and he wasn't feeling well, and his roommate wasn't leaving, so I told him we can go to my place. I sent him the address and I drove home. My husband wasn't going to be there and the kids weren't there. So I thought, Neil was a workaholic. He never neglected me or the kids, but when it came to his money, he worked his butt off so much that he'd always pack his lunch, and if he didn't, he went somewhere nearby so he can get back to work quickly. He loved what he did, and he was a perfectionist. Neil never came home for anything. This day, he did not pack a lunch, and he decided to come home and eat some of my leftovers that I've made the night before meatloaf. Neil confessed all this to me on a phone call from prison. The one time he decided in years to come home for lunch was the one day I decided to cheat on him. Neil did own weapons, and he had a license to carry. The city we live in is a bit rough, and Neil had some incidents before at a gas station. Twice. Once a guy tried to steal his truck, and another group of young guys were trying to rough him up. And one showed a weapon. Neil got out of those situations unscathed. So my colleague and I, who I was cheating with, got it in my bedroom. We had finished, and we were sitting there talking. We had started to go again for a second time, and once we began, I could hear the door open in the living room. I told him to get off of me. He didn't understand why. He didn't hear anything, and I told him someone's here, so be very quiet. I slowly creep up to our bedroom door, and I try to open it very slowly. I got it maybe a quarter of the way open, and it pushed open on me. It was Neil. He looked at my colleague on the bed, and then he looked at me and says, "This is what the F you do when I'm at work? You having sex with another man in our home, in our bed? Are you freaking kidding me right now? Am I dreaming right now? There's no freaking way. This is not happening." I'm just looking at Neil, and he seems like he's just losing his mind. He just literally changed into a different person. I saw anger in his eyes. I pleaded for him to calm down. And I told him I could explain everything. Walked up to the bed. My colleague was so afraid. He threw his hands up and said, "Man, I'm sorry." I'm sorry. Those are the last words of my colleague. Neil pulled out his weapon. He didn't start firing immediately. He started to beat him with his weapon that shuffled around on my bed, crying, blood everywhere. Neil aimed his weapon and fired. I had to watch this with my own eyes. He just looked at me, weapon in hand, and I thought he was going to finish me, and then I thought he was going to finish himself. He leaves the house, then I hear his truck pull off. I couldn't believe this just happened. My colleague is laying in my bed and there's nothing I can do. There's blood everywhere. I didn't even have to call the police. They just showed up. I couldn't tell you how long I've been sitting there. I remember the police asking me what happened. I couldn't say anything. It's like my jaw was locked shut. I couldn't even open my mouth. Outside, my mother was there, and we're in the back of an ambulance. And I see them roll out my colleague and put him in a different ambulance. And I'm sitting there, and my mom is holding me and is talking to me. They're asking me if I'm okay, if I need medical attention. Eventually, I start talking and tell them I'm okay. But my husband. Please find my husband for me. They eventually take me to the hospital. My mom came along with me. She couldn't ride in the back, but she followed. We get to the hospital and the officers are talking to me and asking me what happened and where is my husband. I told them I had no idea where my husband was. My mother pressured me and told me I need to tell them the truth about what happened. In my head, I tried to come up with so many scenarios that would save my husband, but I couldn't think of any, not a single one. So I just told the truth. My husband caught me sleeping with my colleague in our bed. He got upset, and he shot my colleague. I talked with those officers for about 40 more minutes after that. They asked me things like, was my husband ever abusive to me? Did he ever abuse the kids? All types of questions. I told him no. He's never done such things. They found my husband, and he was arrested and charged for what he did to my colleague. I felt horrible. This was all my fault. I should have been the one charged, not my husband. I attended every hearing. My husband was charged and convicted. My ex-colleague's family was not happy. Neil was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Neil tried apologizing to the family, but of course they did not expect. Neil said that he snapped and blacked out. Neil's lawyer argued it was a crime of passion. As a witness, I admitted that Neil turned into a different person and wasn't himself. One of the family members yelled out that he should be sent to prison for life then, since he's now a monster. My mental health began to go downhill during this entire process. My kids had to suffer. I'm still suffering. Neil's family had to suffer, and my ex-colleague's family had to suffer. This was all because I was insecure. If I would have never flirted with my colleague, he'd still be here today. How everything just worked out to create something so horrible just bothers me. Why couldn't my colleague's roommate be away? Why couldn't I be secure within my marriage? Did my ex-husband Neil have to come home that very day? He'd never come home before for lunch. It's just weird how everything played out to create something so horrible. I will never wrap my head around this ever. Neil did write me from prison. I can tell he's going through it mentally as well. I still have the letter, and I can scan to share. There is so much to say. It's hard to put into words. I've spent many years with, and to discover you've been highly inappropriate with other men. Thank God I don't remember what I did to that man. I saw the pictures that were shown in court of the crime scene, but it all was brand new to me. But apparently I did do it, and I know the man above will never forgive me for taking away one of his children. Thank you for cooperating with the divorce. I was told that it would be difficult, but with your efforts, you made everything easy. If you can for me. Thank your mother for allowing me to see my children on my birthday. It means so much to me, and I can't wait to get out to squeeze and hold them. I miss them so much. Oh, right. We have kids, remember? What kind of role model are you? What kind of example are you setting for our daughter? Our son knows exactly what mommy did. I have plenty of anger. There is plenty of pain and heartache. I have endless disillusionment. I'm extremely disappointed in what an unethical, selfish person you've turned out to be. I find it hard to muster even a small bit of respect for you anymore. But here's what you don't realize, and what the last 2 years have taught me. I don't need you anymore. It feels so degrading and disgusting and shameful when your assumed soulmate cheats on you. It destroys your self esteem, your self worth, your sense of belonging, your feeling that you can be loved and are loved. I felt isolated and hollow, damaged, shattered. Fortunately for me, to some extent, I've come back. Enough of that nonsense, and I've simply had it. You've made yourself unlovable. You've driven me away. I've finally seen beneath your mask. I see what a fake, miserable person you really are. You aren't honest with anyone about your behavior or how it possibly affects those around you. I will focus on developing myself and becoming a better man. I know I won't be forgiven for the sin I committed, and I will have to live with that. Even during the hearings for Neil's trial, I started to see a therapist. I clearly was losing my mind. My mom was concerned about me. Family was concerned about me. My therapist was concerned about me. I had to see a psychologist and psychiatrist. I was given medicine that worked at first, but started to make me feel horrible. It gave me stomach pain. I started to flip out very easily and I had to quit working. I filed for disability payments and I was denied one time before I found a lawyer that helped me receive it. I now get a monthly check, but I realized being home and trying to take care of my kids were starting to stress me out. My daughter and I would get into it a lot, and unfortunately, I put my hands on her. She told the school, and both of my children are now gone. When they came to take my children, I laughed and told them, "Don't threaten me with a good time." In that very moment, I was excited because I felt like I could now have some freedom and I wouldn't be as stressed. I knew they'd be somewhere where they were well taken care of. My son was distraught, and he didn't want to leave initially. They didn't end up with family, but now they're with my parents. I see them under supervision, and my daughter has forgiven me for putting her through what I did. I left a scar on her face. I know I am effed up in the head. What I did screwed me over. I screwed everyone over. I messed up. Everybody's lives, and one person is no longer here anymore because of me. I really wish I can go back and fix everything I did wrong, but I can't. There's nothing I can do. In my head, when Neil gets out, I'd love to be there, and he runs and picks me up and tells me he loves me. Let's go back to the life we had. Even if he was to do that, life just isn't the same anymore. We could never go back to where it was. I contemplated offing myself several times. I considered it a few days ago. What's the point? I don't have my children. I don't have my husband, and I destroyed someone's life forever. I tried speaking with my colleague's family. His mother threatened me. There was supposed to be a civil suit towards my husband, but I've heard nothing of it. Don't know what's going on with that. If you decide to read my story to your audience, please let me know before doing so.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah, that was tough, man. All those lives destroyed because you wanted to sleep with somebody else. Man, that's so unfortunate, man. I'm just thinking about that poor guy, the colleague, and I don't even know if he knew she was married or not. You know, what if he had no idea she was married? You know, because if he knew, then it's like, oh well, that's the consequences, of doing what you did. But what if he had no clue? He think he's talking to a single woman this whole time, and this woman's husband comes in with his weapon and ends him just like that. Gotta be careful, man. Gotta be careful. It's easy to say in that moment, oh, well, your roommate was home, that was just a sign. Don't ever go to a woman's, that guy in his head, probably thinking with the wrong head. Oh, I gotta get some, I don't know why. They didn't think hotel, it's easy to say that, like, oh, why didn't you just get a hotel, whatever. He threw out, hey, let's quickly go to my place. He was down. And it's just like, man, that's sad. I don't know, that's sad, dude. All because you're accusing him of cheating on you and just silly stuff. And ultimately, you just wanted to cheat on him. You just wanted a reason to cheat. He has a work wife. I deserve a work husband. What are you talking about? He didn't want to admit that the girl tried to get with him in the first place. But he opened up and told you the truth. And you started accusing him of cheating even more. This was a sad one, man. I'm not going to lie. Guys, let me know what you think about this in the comments. If you want to send in a story, send it to truestorynation@gmail.com. Here, I'll put it on the screen. That's truestorynation@gmail.com.